All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Pfizer's dividend.
Always a hot topic.
Yeah, especially with those high yields. It can make some investors a little nervous, but you sent over some analysis arguing that it's actually pretty secure.
Right. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, and that's why we're here, to break it all down.
Exactly.
So we're going to go through the top 3 reasons why this analysis thinks that Pfizer's dividend might be safer than it seems at first glance.
Sounds good.
The first thing that really jumped out to me was the whole COVID thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, on the surface, it seems kind of counterintuitive. Their overall revenue is down.
Yeah.
But the COVID products are actually like a source of strength for the dividend.
Makes you wonder what's going on.
Yeah, help me understand that.
Well, think about it like this. It's about how their COVID product mix has evolved.
Okay.
So in the beginning, it was all about the vaccine.
Right. Kami or naughty.
Exactly, Kami-naughty. But now the focus has shifted to the oral treatment, Paxlovid. And when you look at the numbers from the third quarter of 2024, Paxlovid brought in a massive $2.7 billion.
Wow.
While Kami-naughty generated $1.4 billion.
That is a big difference.
It is.
Although I guess, to be fair, it's not a perfect apples-to-apples comparison when you look at Paxlovid year over year.
Right.
Because of the funding shift in the U.S., there were basically no sales in 2023.
Absolutely. Always got to be mindful of those little details and context when you're comparing numbers.
For sure.
But even so, you can't deny how much revenue Paxlovid is bringing in. It's a powerhouse for Pfizer, and that directly helps them maintain that dividend.
All right, so that's one piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
The analysis also talks about some moves Pfizer's been making when it comes to assets, like selling things off.
Yeah.
They've been unloading some pretty significant holdings.
They have.
Like those Haleon shares.
Right.
Almost $7 billion.
It's a smart move, and it's not random.
Yeah, why would they just, randomly sell that off?
Well, remember, Pfizer returned $7.1 billion to shareholders just through dividends in the first 9 months of 2024.
Oh, wow.
So these asset sales are directly helping them make those dividend payments.
So they're not just sitting on a pile of cash. They're actively, managing things to keep those payments flowing.
Exactly. It's strategic.
And speaking of strategy, there was this quote from Pfizer's CFO, David Denton, that I thought was really interesting.
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
He said, and I'm quoting here, "Maintaining and growing the dividend is our top priority when it comes to capital allocation."
If you're an income investor, that's got to be pretty reassuring.
Music to your ears, right?
Absolutely. But, actions speak louder than words.
That's true.
So does Pfizer actually walk the walk?
Right.
Well, the analysis points out that Pfizer still owns about 15% of Haleon.
Okay.
And they're planning to keep selling off shares strategically over time.
Interesting.
And get this, an analyst actually asked Denton point blank about selling their entire hospital business.
Wow, bold question.
It was, and Denton's response was, all options are on the table.
So it sounds like they're willing to consider anything if it means maximizing shareholder value.
Exactly, and that includes making sure they can pay that dividend.
Okay, I like it. They're not afraid to shake things up.
Nope, they're definitely proactive.
Now let's talk about patent cliffs, because that's a big challenge for any pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, it's a reality of the industry.
Especially for income investors
Yeah.
who are, relying on those steady dividends.
Right.
Basically, it's when a drug loses its exclusivity and all of a sudden generic competitors can just flood the market.
Yep, and sales can plummet.
That's got to be a major concern, right?
It's a valid concern, but the analysis makes the case that Pfizer is addressing this risk head-on with a constant stream of new products.
Okay, so they're not just sitting back and waiting for the cliff to come. They're actively trying to stay ahead of it.
Exactly. They're highlighting several successful launches just in the third quarter alone.
Wow, that's impressive.
So we've got cancer drugs like Adcetris, Pachevtukisa, and Tivdak, plus a new migraine therapy called Nurtec.
Interesting.
And here's the thing, some of these weren't even developed in-house, they were acquired.
Oh, so they're playing the field looking for promising therapies out there.
Exactly. It's a smart approach, diversifying their growth strategy.
So it's like they're building a whole portfolio of new revenue streams to offset any potential losses from those patent cliffs.
Right. They're anticipating future challenges and building a more resilient business model.
Makes sense. And speaking of exciting new products, there's one that I got to ask about. It really caught my eye in the analysis.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
Danuglipron, the oral weight loss drug.
You're definitely onto something there.
There's a lot of buzz around it.
For good reason.
Is it really as promising as they're making it out to be?
It could be huge.
Okay.
Pfizer wants to be the second to market with an oral weight loss medication, and that market is enormous.
Cool.
But even bigger picture, think about it this way. This constant flow of new products, whether they're developed internally or acquired, it helps Pfizer avoid putting all their eggs in one basket.
Right, so they're not overly reliant on any single drug.
Exactly. It's about spreading the risk and making sure they have multiple avenues for growth, even as older drugs face more competition.
And that is good news for anyone who's counting on that dividend.
Absolutely. It shows they're committed to maintaining it.
Now, there's one more factor the analysis brought up that I want to highlight.
Okay, what is it?
Cost reduction.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
It's not just about bringing in more revenue. It's also about managing expenses efficiently.
Right. Got to watch the bottom line.
And it sounds like Pfizer's doing just that.
They are, remember that quote from David Denton we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Well, he specifically mentioned that their cost-cutting measures are setting the stage for increased capital returns and supporting our commitment to both maintaining and growing our dividend.
I love it when a company actually follows through on their promises.
Me too. It shows integrity.
So let's recap here. Strong COVID product sales, strategic asset sales, a pipeline packed with potential, and a real focus on keeping costs down. It does seem like a pretty compelling argument for Pfizer's commitment to that dividend.
It does, but we got to remember this is just one perspective.
Right.
Investing always has an element of risk.
Of course.
So before making any decisions, it's crucial to do your own research and look at things from different angles.
Absolutely. This deep dive is just a starting point. It's like a framework for understanding the key arguments, but it's up to each individual investor to dig deeper and decide what's right for them.
Exactly. Think of it as a jumping off point for your own investigation.
So what I'm hearing is don't just take our word for it.
Right. Do your own homework.
And that's what makes investing so interesting.
It is. It's a journey.
There's always more to learn.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so engaging. You're constantly discovering new things.
Now, what I find really interesting here is that even though the analysis focuses on these specific factors, it also kind of hints at a bigger theme.
Oh, what's that?
Pfizer's adaptability.
Yeah.
They're not just resting on their past successes. They're really responding to a changing market.
They're actively evolving.
Selling assets, acquiring new products, and just constantly looking for ways to improve their operations.
It's a dynamic approach.
And that brings us to a question for you, the listener.
All right, I like where this is going.
What other research might you want to do to feel confident in your own decision about Pfizer?
It's a good question because this deep dive has given you a solid foundation, but the learning doesn't stop there.
Right. Maybe you're curious about those new drugs in their pipeline.
Yeah.
Or maybe you want to compare their cost-cutting measures to other big pharmaceutical companies.
That's a great idea. Or you could even look into how future healthcare policy changes might impact Pfizer's business.
There's so many different angles to explore.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of investing. There's always something new to discover.
So we've given you the tools and the insights to dig deeper.
Now it's your turn to put them to use.
Investigate, analyze, and form your own informed opinion.
That's what being a savvy investor is all about.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this part of our deep dive into Pfizer's dividend safety.
Sounds good.
But stick around, because in the next part, we're going to share some additional resources that can help you take your research even further.
We'll give you some great places to start.
So you can solidify your understanding of this fascinating company.
It's a company worth understanding.
Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Pfizer's dividend.
Glad to be back.
We've been going through all these key factors that make the argument for its safety.
Yeah, some pretty compelling points.
And now we're going to keep that momentum going and equip you with some extra resources.
Exactly. Got to give our listeners the tools to dig deeper.
Exactly. Because knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing.
Couldn't agree. More informed decisions are the best decisions.
So where would you recommend someone start if they really want to get down to the nitty-gritty details?
Well, I always say go straight to the source.
Makes sense.
Pfizer's investor relations website is a goldmine of information.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You've got financial reports, presentations, transcripts from earnings calls, all kinds of stuff.
It's a treasure trove for anyone who really wants to, roll up their sleeves and get into the data.
Exactly. But let's be real. Sometimes those financial reports can be a little dense.
Yeah, they're not exactly beach reading.
Nope. but that's where independent financial analysis sites can be helpful.
Oh, yeah, like Seeking Alpha or Morningstar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They have tons of articles, opinions, and even those stock ratings that a lot of people look at.
Right, so they can kind of help break down the complex stuff and offer different perspectives.
Exactly. But it's important to remember they're just offering interpretations.
Right, not the absolute truth.
Exactly. So approach those analyses with a critical eye. And don't just read the stuff that confirms what you already believe.
Challenge yourself.
Yeah, consider different viewpoints, even if you disagree with them.
That's how you get a well-rounded perspective.
Exactly.
Now, we live in a digital world, but I think it's important to not forget about good old-fashioned news coverage.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Places like the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, even industry-specific sources like Fierce Pharma.
They can be so valuable.
Because they provide that context. They help you understand what's happening in the real world and how it's impacting Pfizer's business.
Exactly. It's about connecting the dots between the numbers and the actual events.
So there you have it, a whole toolkit for your continued exploration of Pfizer.
Yep. We've given you the arguments, the framework, and now the resources.
Now it's your turn.
Go forth and research.
What's really fascinating to me is that even with all this information, there's still this element of unpredictability.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like the future of healthcare drug development, the global economy.
It's all constantly in flux.
And that's the nature of investing, right?
It's absolutely no guarantees.
It's about assessing risks, weighing the potential, and making decisions based on the best information you have at the time.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, the decision of whether or not to invest in Pfizer is entirely up to you.
But hopefully after this deep dive, you feel empowered to make that decision.
With a better understanding of all the factors involved.
And who knows, maybe you'll even uncover some cool insights along the way.
Always fun to learn something new.
That's what makes investing so exciting.
It is a constant journey of discovery.
But before we let you go, there's one more crucial piece of the puzzle we need to talk about.
Oh, okay. What's that?
The ethical considerations.
Yes. Important stuff.
And that's what we're going to tackle in the final part of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Pfizer.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We've talked about their dividend strategy, their pipeline, all these new products, and even gave you some resources to do your own research.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
But there's one more crucial thing we need to talk about before we wrap things up.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
The ethical side of things.
Yes. That's important.
Especially for a company like Pfizer.
Right. They're dealing with people's health with life-saving medications.
Exactly. And they've got these complex global operations.
So there are a lot of ethical considerations to think about.
For sure. I mean, I'm not saying Pfizer's doing anything wrong.
Right.
But like any big company, there are always potential concerns.
Of course.
And it's our job as informed investors to, be aware of those things.
Absolutely got to consider all angles.
So let's get specific. What are some of the ethical things that come to mind when we're talking about a company like Pfizer?
Well, one that always comes up is drug pricing.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Pfizer and other pharmaceutical companies have been criticized for the high cost of some of their medications.
Right, and it's a tough issue.
It is.
Because on the one hand, you've got the huge amount of money they have to spend on research and development.
Yeah, they got to recoup those costs and make a profit.
Right, but on the other hand, people need access to affordable health care.
Exactly. It's a balancing act for sure.
And it's not just about the price tag either, right?
No, they're also concerned about their marketing practices.
Especially those direct-to-consumer ads.
Yeah. There's a fine line between giving people information and, maybe influencing them to ask for drugs they don't actually need.
Right. It's got to be transparent and responsible.
Absolutely.
And then there's the whole clinical trials thing.
Yeah.
They do so much research to develop new drugs, but those trials involve human subjects.
Right. Got to make sure it's all ethical.
Informed consent, patient safety, all that stuff.
It's paramount.
So basically, ethical considerations are kind of woven into every part of what they do.
Exactly. From the lab to the factory to the pharmacy.
So as an investor, how can you really assess a company's ethical performance?
That's a good question. It's not like we can go in and audit them ourselves.
Right.
But there are resources out there.
Oh, okay. Like what?
There are organizations like the Access to Medicine Foundation. Okay. They publish rankings and reports that look at how pharmaceutical companies are doing when it comes to improving access to medicine in poorer countries.
Interesting. I guess you can always check out those news sources we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Investigative journalism can be really helpful.
Sometimes they uncover some shady stuff.
That's right. So it's about staying informed and knowing what to look for.
And then you can kind of decide for yourself how committed a company seems to be to ethical practices.
Exactly. It's not always easy to figure out.
Definitely a lot of gray areas.
But as we've been saying, knowledge is power.
The more you know, the better.
About every aspect of a company, including their ethics.
Then you can make investment decisions that align with your values.
Exactly. It's about feeling good about where you put your money.
Well said. I think we've covered a ton of ground today.
We have.
We explored those factors supporting Pfizer's dividend, dove into their new products, talked about the ethical considerations, and even gave you some tools to keep learning.
A true deep dive.
And at the end of the day, the decision is yours.
Absolutely.
We've given you the information, the insights, the tools to make a well-informed choice.
Now it's up to you to weigh everything and see if Pfizer fits your investment goals and your values.
So that wraps up our deep dive into Pfizer.
It's been a pleasure.
But remember, your journey doesn't have to end here.
Keep learning, keep asking questions.
And keep striving to be the most informed investor you can be.
Absolutely.
That's it for us.
Until next time.
Happy investing.